I'm going to call our SoCal Elementary School District Board meeting together. First of all, we're going to have our pledge leader for tonight. And Mr. Broadhurst, would you like to introduce Tatiana?
Yes, it's my pleasure to introduce. There's a weird echo. I'm not sure where that's coming from. It's my pleasure to introduce one of our 8th grade students, Tatiana Juarez, who's going to lead the Pledge of Allegiance and read the mission statement. She's a transfer student, has been with us in 7th and 8th grade and doing really well academically. And after speaking to her earlier, a couple of weeks ago, actually, I thought, what a great selection. Miss Bell, her humanities teacher, said she'd be a great representative of New Brighton. So I'll turn it over to Tatiana.
Hello. Okay. I'll start the Pledge of Allegiance now. Please stand. Place your hand on your heart and ready, begin. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. And for the SoCal Union Elementary School District mission statement, staff, students, parents, and the community share the responsibility for each child's success. We are committed to ensuring that each student develops the skills and confidence for lifelong achievement and is prepared to make a positive contribution to our world.
Thank you, Tatiana. And I hope we've been able to help build some of the self-confidence that you seem to possess. And it's just a pleasure having you be a New Brighton student. And I'm so glad that you represented our student body tonight. And perhaps the board may have some questions for you.
Well, first of all, I'm going to read her certificate of recognition first, and then board members will have a chance to ask you some questions, Tatiana.
Okay.
So I am going to read this wonderful statement about you. And it says, Tatiana Juarez, and that's how you pronounce your last name, right?
It's Juarez.
Juarez, okay.
Yeah.
Shared that 2 of her favorite things about New Brighton Middle School is all her friends, and that the school is so close to the beach. That is pretty cool, having a school that's a couple blocks from the beach, isn't it?
Yeah.
Tatiana's favorite subject is math. She feels that distance learning has been a huge adjustment, but she has been able to manage it pretty well. In her free time, Tatiana enjoys playing with her dog, helping her sister with stuff, and relaxing. When asked if she had any thoughts about what she'd like to do when she finishes college, not high school, but college, right? Tatiana said that she doesn't know what she would like to do after college, but some of her ideas include becoming a realtor or an attorney. Those are great. Those are great goals. And on your recognition here, I see there's a picture of a dog with a pink sweater on. Is that your puppy?
I don't believe so.
Oh, okay. But you do have a dog. Do you have a dog?
Yeah.
What kind of dog do you have?
Pembroke Welsh Corgi. He's about 4 months.
Oh, really? Still a puppy?
Yeah, we just got him.
Wow. So kind of like your best friend, right?
Yeah.
Follows you all over the place. I bet. And also you like math. You really enjoy math and everything that math pertains to, which is great.
Yeah.
Which is fun. Problem solving.
Yeah. Ever since I was a kid, I always really enjoyed math.
That's great. That's good. Especially when you go somewhere where you have to convert kilometers to miles. You try to do that in your head. When you're going, wait, 120 kilometers? How fast is that? Any other board members have any questions for Tatiana?
Oh, sure. I'm not shy. Hi, Tatiana. Thank you so much for being here with us. We really appreciate it. We love talking to our students. First, I wanted to let you know we have a a special guest here at the meeting who's going to, I think, talk to us later during public comment, but he happens to be a trustee for Cabrillo College, our local community college. So I can't help but give a shout out to Cabrillo College and the great programs they offer. Two of my kids at home are high schoolers, and they've had a great opportunity, even as high school students, to take some classes at Cabrillo. So that's something to be aware of, especially if you like math. They've got great math programs, science, language, you name it. So we're so lucky to have the resource in our community. And seeing Adam's face made me really want to talk about Cabrillo for a minute. But one question that I really like asking students right now is, in this past year, as everything has changed so much and we've had, been doing more things at home, online school, have you picked up any new hobbies or learned something new, done something differently with your time now that the world's been so different since last March?
I wouldn't say anything new, but there's a lot more stuff I've started doing again. I've done a lot more like going outside because of my dog. I'm with my sister a lot more, which is nice. Just being with my family.
Yeah, I think that's true for a lot of us. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Hi, Tatiana. Thanks for being here. I believe Principal Broadhurst said that you transferred to New Brighton. Is that correct?
Yeah.
And it sounds like you've adjusted quite well and such a good student leader. How was that transition, and what advice do you have for kids who are transitioning to new schools or maybe into school after distance learning, since you seem to have mastered that?
Yeah. For me, it wasn't so much as going to I went to a new school, and one of the things I was most scared of was being accepted and making friends. But I think especially at New Brighton and just the SoCal district, everyone's very warm and welcoming, and it's just pretty easy. And teachers are super nice and everything's fairly easy.
Thank you.
Tatiana, I would just like to say thank you for representing, and I think people can pick up fairly quickly that you're a confident young student, and I can understand why Miss Bell nominated you, because you have a presence and it's going to serve you really well throughout your life. So we expect great things from you in the future. So you'll move forward and carry the New Brighton flag high as you go on your future endeavors.
Thank you.
Tatiana, I think when you get to high school, you might be interested in chemistry. If you like math, then that's what chemistry is. So good luck with that.
Okay. Thank you.
Tatiana, I just want to thank you so much for joining us tonight and for your poise and maturity. So thank you for coming.
Of course.
All right, Tatiana. It was awesome meeting you. Stay awesome. Okay.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me.
Oh, it's awesome meeting you. And thanks for making the meeting the way it is, getting off to a good start.
Okay. Bye.
Thank you very much, and you have a good evening.
You too.
Bye,
All right, bye now.
Bye.
Before we go on the roll call, I'm going to turn it over to Scott. He's gonna say a little something about Mr. Don Myers, who passed away this week. Scott.
Thank you, Ted. I'm going to share my screen here for a minute and make sure we get a good picture of our friend and colleague up there who passed away last week. I just want to say that we've had so many amazing comments come in from all the people that Don knew in his distinguished career, over 30 years in the district, and took care of our grounds in a way that was way more than a job. It was something very personable and something he was very passionate about. And as we all deal with the grief, we've also shared many stories about Don and his interactions with all of us. And so I would just ask everybody to share a moment of silence with me in honor of our friend and colleague, Don Myers. Well, thank you so much for joining me in that moment of silence. As I said, you know, I think we've all been on an email string at some point where there's been a reply all and it keeps going and going. I don't know about you, but generally in my experience, that's not always a super positive thing. And in this case, when we sent out the sad news, this was one case where it was the exact opposite. And we had over 70 people in our little district reply, all with just amazing stories of Don's many attributes. But one that stood out is his generosity of time and his passion for what he did. So if you'll so indulge me, I would like to share a skimmed down version of a video that was shared with us by our garden specialist at Santa Cruz Gardens, Jade. I want to thank Jade out there for sharing the video we're about to show. And like I said, it was like a 10-minute video that really kind of caught a good glimpse of what Don was all about. We've pared it down to about 2 minutes just to, for the sake of time at a board meeting and everything. But I think it shows a good glimpse into Don. So if it's okay with the board, I'd like to go ahead and share my screen one last time and share this brief video. And again, shout out to Jade, our garden specialist at Santa Cruz Gardens for taking this video and sharing it as part of that very beautiful email string that everybody responded to. So without further ado. Make sure I have the right one. Maybe if a couple of you can give me a thumbs up if you see the video screen of a truck, Don's truck there that we're all familiar with. All right, good. I think I'm going to go ahead and play this. I think I need to leave my volume on, and here we go.
This week we have Gardener Don. Good morning,
Can you hear
Don.
that?
Good morning.
Great to see you out here in the garden. Don is often out here working really super hard. He's going to tell us, maybe you could tell us a couple of things about what your job is, and then Don is going to start a super cool project today.
My job is landscape maintenance for the whole school district, our school district, which is Soquel Elementary, Main Street Elementary, Santa Cruz Gardens Elementary, New Brighton Middle School, and Opal Cliff School.
And if it's too short, it'll be harder for the tree to heal it.
If it's too short, the wood itself will start to rot and will go back into the stem, and that rot will make the stem sick, and it'll look like the tree isn't well. It might be sick. It's just gone dormant. It kind of goes to sleep in the wintertime and stores all its nutrients, and then in the spring will send out new leaves. Some trees are just send out their flowers first and are absolutely beautiful when they come out in foliage. You can see over here on this pear, sometimes you have to cut large branches, and you can see here where that callus is healing over. But also they will bleed a bit, and we want to minimize that. We want them to be healthy. A very small little process or a little blurb on that. And
well, what an important job, and we so appreciate all your hard work.
Well,
thanks so much.
It takes a community to raise a garden.
Absolutely.
We want to get the kids all going on that. So this is something that goes multi-generational through all the generations, and all the people, when the kids grow up, they'll teach their kids.
Absolutely.
And so on and so on.
Such important work.
Have a good day. Be well, everybody.
Yep. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Well, I hope from that little glimpse you just got some insight into the man that was Don. You can tell very quickly he cared about the kids, he cared about this community, and he cared about the work that he did with all of our landscaping. So just again, in loving memory of Don Myers. And I would like to say that we have been in contact with his wonderful two kids, adult kids, I should say, Brad and Jessica. And if we will definitely share with everybody in our school community if we get word on any kind of memorial service, whether it's virtual or otherwise. We'll be sure to keep everybody in the loop, because we know his web of contacts spread far and wide in this community. So thank you for indulging that time to honor our friend.
Thank you, Scott, for putting that together. I think we all have a little something to say about Don. I've known him for a very long time, not only from being on the board, but from coaching too, and just around town. And I always thought hopefully we could name something after Don, like Myers, Meadow or something like that. It would be nice if we could name something after him down the road. Any other board members would like to say anything, or anybody else, as a matter of fact, if you want to say a moment, something about Don? Not, that's fine too. We all know what an awesome person he was, and especially with the email strings as well too. Thank you again, Scott. Oh, I'm sorry.
It's hard after that video to talk.
Yeah, it is.
Ted,
All right, gang.
I'll add on, if I may just add on.
Please.
That we are looking at different ways to honor him. There's been a lot of great ideas. He's one of those people that the spirit was so generous that it's kind of easy to find and think of ways to honor him, that connect with the natural world. So we've talked about those a lot. We have some great ideas. Right now, we're kind of trying to give a little bit of space with the family because we'd like to involve them when we ultimately implement those ideas. But again, we'll be sure to share all of that information when we get a little further along. And I saw that Craig had his hand up.
Oh, I was just going to say thanks for sharing that. Most of us had some type of contact with Don through our work in the district, and I saw him probably once a week, twice a week, some weeks, and it was just I was actually on a meeting when the text came, and there was a couple of us who got the text, and we just couldn't believe what we were reading, and then it's like you don't want to believe that news, and then the email chain that just kept growing was just a nice testimony to the way he touched people, because I only thought about Don and my relationship with Don, and then I realized, wow, he had these relationships with all these other employees of our district, and everybody had positive things to say about Don. So he will be missed, but not forgotten, but will be missed.
Thank you, Craig. Okay, with that, let's move on. Roll call. Linda, please.
Trustee Rodriguez,
Here.
Trustee Jackson Miller,
Here.
Trustee Izon Gonzalez,
Here.
Trustee Friedman,
Present.
Trustee Donnelly.
Present. Thank you. Is there a motion to adopt the agenda as it stands?
I'll make the motion. Carolyn.
I'll second. Amanda.
Okay, Carolyn, Amanda, all in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? None. All right, is there a motion to approve the consent agenda as it stands?
Sure, I'll make
Jen,
the motion. Jen's got it.
There we go. The Jen square. All right, who's second square? Phil?
Amanda.
All right.
Amanda, okay. All right. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? None. Come on, guys, we gotta look good. We got another trustee here. No, we all look good. All right, public communications. We have Adam Speckler here. And I'm going to turn it over to you, Adam, if you'd like to introduce what you would like to share with the board and the public.
Sure. Thank you very much for having me. It's weird to be at a meeting where I don't have to vote. So I had emailed asking if I could make a public comment. like Amanda and Ted pointed out, my name's Adam Spickler. I'm a trustee for Cabrillo College, and I actually represent a portion of the SoCal Unified School District. I'm commenting tonight to invite SoCal Unified Elementary School families, teachers, administrators, and staff to attend Cabrillo College's upcoming educational community events. They are related to our exploration of a possible name change for the college. Some of you may recall, there have been some recent news reports and some this past summer that Cabrillo College received a request. The request came in July to consider whether or not our college should continue to be named after Juan Rodriguez Cabrillo, who is a somewhat controversial historic figure, who is both the namesake of our college and for many landmarks throughout the state of California. As a trustee for the college and a member of the Name Exploration Subcommittee that I am on, I want to invite you because, you know, really K-12 families, teachers, administrators, communities are a really valuable member of the larger Cabrillo community. Hopefully many of you families will have children eventually attending Cabrillo or the college. And we're hoping that you'll consider attending one or more of our upcoming educational events. We're having a series that will explore who Juan Rodriguez Cabrillo was historically, why in 1959 our founding trustees chose to name the college after him. We're going to hear from a panel of indigenous historians and representatives of the Amumutsan tribe describing the colonialist impact on native tribes and why Cabrillo's name carries some stained historical legacy. Most importantly, our students will be holding a debate on whether or not the name of the college should be changed. And we're also holding a contest. There will be an award competition for speeches, essays, artworks, and music that students will have created reflecting their feelings on the Cabrillo name and whether or not it should remain or be changed. And that will be coming at the end of the spring semester. This series will highlight some of the top submissions from local students, and that will be really exciting. I'm going to drop a link in the chat here. I hope that's okay. And I hope it's something that folks, if they're tuning in on YouTube, are able to grab as well. But we've got a web page on our Cabrillo site that's really dedicated to the name exploration process. I'm adding that in there. And when you click on that link, the very first thing you're going to see are each of the 6 upcoming events that we're going to be holding and a link. No need to RSVP in advance, no cost to attend, a link to attend. And when you do, we're going to have a very, very brief pre-survey before the event starts, just to ask 2 or 3 very basic questions, how familiar you are with the name of the college. And then again, after the event, we'll have just a slightly longer, did you learn something you didn't already know survey at the end. And we think each of the educational lecture series are going to be really interesting, educational, and hopefully community building. To us, that's really the most important piece of this is no matter where we eventually land on whether the college should continue to be named Cabrillo, we hope it's something where we all come through it together, learning and building community. And lastly, I'll say that it's, oh, and thank you to whoever it was that added it to the YouTube. Kristen Fabos, who's our public information officer for the college, will be reaching out, if she hasn't already, with a flyer and sending it to your public information officer or whoever the most appropriate person is. And if you would be willing to consider sending the flyer out to interested parties throughout the district, whether that just be staff, faculty and staff, or if you're also able to send it out to families, that would be wonderful. And I hope I've kept it to 2 minutes or under.
Oh, you're close.
Okay. And
I do have the flyer up right now, Adam, and it you know, I'll make a clarifying statement. We can't have a discussion, but it looks very interesting, and I would suggest if we could maybe post it on our website, because I think actually personally it's very educational on how our educational institution or facilities are named, and you know how it could go about being named. I mean, this is like history in the making, basically, what it's coming down to. And so I think for an educational standpoint, it would be nice if we could have a link, a little blurb on our website about this too.
I agree with that. And I think the sentiment really is it's invaluable that the whole community participates, but so much so that the K-12 community participates. You're our future.
Right. All right. Well, any other board members have clarifying questions?
It's not a question, but I'm so interested to see the student artwork, hear the music, see the student debate. Yeah. And I think that would be something that would be really interesting to our New Brighton students, some of our older elementary school students and families, right? To see what kind of work you can do at that level. So thank you for sharing, Adam.
Absolutely.
Thank you, Adam. And you have a good evening.
You as well. Thanks for having me. I greatly appreciate it.
Do we have any other public comments out there in the virtual world?
I don't have anything on text.
Nothing on email.
No one else on Zoom.
All right, very good. Let's move on to our standing reports, and I guess we'll start with Michelle.
Good evening, everybody. It's good to see everyone virtually. I just would like to thank Superintendent Turnbull for his very kind words regarding Don and his time with us in the district. I think he was such a fixture, especially in business. When he would come in, he always had the greatest things to say about the plants out there and everything in our gardens and yards, and it was always fun to have him come in. So I just want to say that. Thank you. Many of the items and the things that I've been doing this week are on some agenda items later in the board meeting, so I'll let Superintendent Turnbull address those. But I was able to attend the racial justice meeting regarding administrative council and the board's workshop last week. Both are always so enjoyable from the different perspectives from administrative council and from the board's perspective. So I really enjoyed that. We're just chugging along in business. Most of our focus has been on getting the elementaries ready for yesterday and this week. And so now we're shifting our focus onto the middle school and helping them move forward and all the progress they need to make for after spring break. And we're just busily buying away. But I do want to say that I had the opportunity with Principal Broadhurst to be up and Linda up at Santa Cruz Gardens for the last 2 days. And Principal Lemos, you were amazing. Absolutely. It was so much fun. I told Scott today when I got back, I am so sad I don't get to go back tomorrow morning. They were just, those little ones were just cutest ever. Like some of them, you know, I got to be the concierge and open the door and welcome them to the school. And some of them ran out of the school and they were like, let's go. And then some of them were a little bit shy, but gosh, every one of them were just a delight to talk to, and talk to two little twins today that, I mean, that conversation will be with me forever. They were on it. June and Max were their names, and June very properly explained to me the etiquette of when and how to wear a mask while eating in public. So I did not have to explain anything to her, and she's just so cute. So I'm going to end on that because it just made my week to be up there. So thank you, Principal Lemos. You did an amazing job.
You're muted, Ted.
There, I was seeing if you knew. Jessica, okay. There you are. There's your square. It's yours.
Thank you. Well, I will pick up where Michelle left off. I too have had the privilege of spending a few days at the elementary schools during the reopening. My privilege was at Main Street with Ronnie and his team and my fellow colleagues, Jackie and Allison. I cannot tell you that I have not had a better 2 days in years. I can honestly say spending time with our staff and students has been such a joy, and seeing the families and talking to the families as they were rolling up, seeing, you know, faces of happiness and the gratefulness to see friends in person and their teachers in person was just really inspiring to me. And I have left each day just so fulfilled. So that has been my greatest joy. Just a few other things in our Ed Services world, which have been amazing. We're planning for summer school. We've met now twice since the last time our board met. And we've posted our positions, our classified and certificated positions, and also our lead position. And we've broken into subcommittees to talk about curriculum, assessment, data collection, student servicing, all of those kinds of things, and building in an inclusive program with Eric and his ESY team. So that's been absolutely fantastic. Our school district has just started its first Spanish-speaking parent book club, reading Permiso para Sentir, and it is a generative idea that came from our families out of the Family Latino Literacy night. And we're really excited about that. If any of you are interested in reading the book in Spanish or in English, we can get you a copy. I've just started trying to read the Spanish version, but Jackie was grateful. I'm grateful that she bought me the English version because I'm much more successfully reading that one. We have also been able to meet with our initial ILP team with our pilot teachers and our target students. So we're really excited that we're starting that process. We have also been really excited to reopen Opal Cliffs for potential mid-year entries into the program for students and families who've been interested, and also looking into the program for next year. And Suzanne and Lori will be doing a presentation at an upcoming board meeting about where the trajectory of the school is going, and I will be with them. But there will be a project-based learning strand that will be built into that school next year. So really excited about that. And then also too, working with Santa Cruz Garden Subcommittee, their curriculum subcommittee in particular, most recently. And Carissa and I left that meeting thinking, wow, we have the greatest jobs. We get to plan for innovative futures that don't yet exist. And this is an amazing place to be. So just so much like going on in this ed services side of the world. And I just am so proud to be able to work in a district that cherishes that work and that values, you know, each human for what they bring, because certainly we see it every day. Just such a great place to be. So that's my update for tonight.
Thank you. Scott.
Thank you, Ted. I will quickly just build off of a few things that Jessica mentioned. I'm so proud of and grateful for the work that's being done in relation to the science and environmental literacy focus at Santa Cruz Gardens. It's nothing more rewarding than to work with a team and identify an idea, and then seeing amazing professionals take that ball and run with it and make it real. So I'm just really appreciative of that. Same thing with Opal Cliffs. You know, that program is going to serve our district well for a long time in many ways. So thank you for your work on that. And the Spanish Book Club, you know, just ties in beautifully with the work that we're doing on equity. So the only other thing I would add that's not going to be addressed in an item later, and including I'll be able to address my experience at Soquel and the wonderful hybrid start we had over there, but I'll hold off on that till the item. The only other thing I would just add is that next week we have another meeting of our dual language immersion leadership team as we really start to concretely define what that program, that dual language program, will look like at Soquel Elementary beginning not next year, but the year after, with the kindergarten cohort in the 22-23 school year. So thank you very much.
Do we have anybody here from CSEA? I don't think we do we? Okay. We have Gordon here, SEA. Hey, hi, Gordon.
Hey, everybody. Hold on, let me take my AirPod out. Can you guys still hear me?
Yeah.
Okay, great. Yeah, it's actually been a relatively quiet week for SE, or quiet couple weeks for SEA by comparison to the rest of the year. So that's been kind of nice for me a little bit. Been a few site meetings this week. And as you would imagine, as our youngest students are coming back, teachers are just hammering out those details and really thinking about really getting down to the nuts and bolts of having their students back in the classroom, which is a lot to process for a lot. But I've just heard some fantastic stories about the reopenings of the youngest students, the elementary levels, and just how positive and happy everybody's been to be back. And of course, working out all those details and all those kinks is stressful for everybody. And I have the most insight at that at the middle school level, where, teachers are starting to get tables for their classrooms. We're starting to work out things like lines in the hallways for direction students are walking, policies on windows in classrooms. Those are the sorts of things that we're having conversations about. And yeah, I think also a lot of conversations about Don and a lot of thoughts and prayers and stories being shared about Don. I think, he's one of those people that it seems like everybody had some experiences with him and some stories to share. And it's just been really humbling, that the kind of outpouring that we've heard about Don. So that's pretty much it for SEA this week.
All right, thank you. Thank you very much. Let's see, let's move on to our trustees. Anybody like to jump in before I pick a square? Come on, you guys. All right, Phil.
I won.
Yeah, you did. Yeah, square number one.
So I have just one thing. I had the opportunity to visit Soquel Elementary yesterday morning and observe administrative and operational staff conduct the drop-off operation, and it was an operation. Right from before the student got out of their car to being walked to their classroom, they were accompanied the whole way. So it was great, and I did a good job of staying out of the way.
Good for you. Thank you. Amanda.
All right. Let's see. Last week, I attended the Racial Justice Task Force meeting, and then we all had our board workshop the next night. And as a parent with my parent hat on, I attended the reopening town hall for Santa Cruz Gardens families. And as a parent wondering all the mechanics and nuts and bolts of, how your child what will happen when your child enters campus and et cetera, though all of those questions were answered really well. And we're getting so much wonderful communication. And I think, as board members, it's wonderful to receive it all. And it's nice seeing how our parents also are getting very, very clear communication in a number of different ways with just so much access to the information, which is of course critical as things have been constantly changing in the last year. So just again, so much appreciation to everyone who is making that all possible, making those communications. And thank you again, Scott, for sharing the really wonderful picture and video of Don Myers. And it was great to see Jade sharing that. And that was part of the Life Lab curriculum that was shared with students. So that was a video that students did as a part of the curriculum. I think it was earlier this fall. So just a lovely, lovely person. I always enjoyed seeing him around campus and around town. So he will be missed. Thank you.
Thank you, Amanda. Next square down, Carolyn.
I will keep it short. I attended the Racial Justice Task Force as well as the special board meeting. That's it from me.
All right, thank you. Jen.
Hi, I like when you pick, Ted, because it goes quicker. So I just also want to echo what everyone said with the beautiful video. It was great being neighbors with Don. And so I got the fortune of seeing him every morning and every afternoon. And so, yeah, that was beautiful and just the touching words of our community. And this morning I got to walk my son to kindergarten. So that was great. I got to see Jessica there and our whole team, and it was just beautiful. So it was a lovely experience. So thank you all.
All right, thank you. Besides for the sadness of Dawn, and thank you, Scott, for what you said, and it's in the video is wonderful as well. I have nothing to report out on. So let's move on to our presentations, and we have Carissa Lemos, principal at Santa Cruz Gardens. Scott, you want to introduce her?
I would love to introduce her. It's my honor. In fact, last year while we were in the middle of trying to figure out how to navigate this pandemic, we were also faced with a change in leadership at Santa Cruz Gardens. And we were just so fortunate that somebody within our own ranks was poised to take on a leadership role. And we were able to have Carissa Lemos take over as principal. And we have never regretted that decision one day since. And so here we are now with the ability for Carissa to talk about what's been going on while she's been able to be at the reins of Santa Cruz Gardens. So with that, I will turn it over to Principal Lemos.
Well, thank you, Scott and board for having me. It's an exciting time, and we are thrilled to be welcoming kids back to school. So as I thought about what to present on tonight, I tried to think of an image that would really capture the year. And what I came up with was a roller coaster, because it's been one. Lots of ups and downs, some really high highs and some hard lows. But the really important thing is that we have all been in those little roller coaster cars together as a site and as a district. And that is something that we're really proud of. And that is what has gotten us to now, which is being able to welcome students back and see how excited they are to be back, and see families excited to have them back. This morning during drop off, I watched two very proud parents of a kindergartner leave him and then get to the parking lot and do like full fist pumps in the air. So it's a really exciting time. So I'll just go through a little bit of what we've been doing, and then most excitedly, what we have been planning. So this year has been a new normal, but we have tried to keep things as normal as possible. So I grabbed these photos. We still had our book fair this year. Teachers came through and would read virtually to their classes, and then we were able to offer it to our family community during our materials pickup time, and lots of other stuff. We had our Pages and PJs event, all sorts of things that would be part of a normal school year, because this is our normal this year. And so we've been rolling with it as best we can, and keeping kids and families engaged in the exciting community work at Santa Cruz Gardens. Lots of synchronous instruction happening. You guys have not lived until you have visited a TK class, learning enthusiastically on Zoom. It is amazing what our teachers have accomplished in the way that they engage kids, not just deliver instruction, but truly engage kids and really meaningful learning opportunities about so much more than just reading and writing and math. They're learning a lot about perseverance. They're learning a lot about community, and now they're back, and we're really, really excited about that. You guys have mentioned Jade, and she's actually on the screen here. She's in that second square down from the top on the left there. That is Jade, our living classroom teacher. And I picked this picture because that's another thing that we've been able to continue this year, is making sure that our living classroom teacher is in class and participating with students and getting our kids access to that very important program that we're able to provide in partnership with our Home and School Club. So I wanted to highlight that, and then there will be a little bit more on that later. Lots of asynchronous instruction as well. This little guy has been in our in-person cohort, and I can't think of a better video to kind of show the way that teachers have really provided meaningful instruction, not just when they're all together on Zoom or Google Meet, but also at home. So give me a thumbs up when I start playing this to let me know that you can hear it.
Hi. And so I wanted to ramp. Let's see what's happened to the car. Nothing happened. And let's try the bear now. And let's do it. And a purse and lay down. Now let's try the dice. Let's see it move or not move. Let's see what's happened. It didn't move, but a push. Bye.
When I called parents to make sure it was okay with them to use this video, they first of all didn't seem surprised. I think that Angel is pretty well known in the community. He's definitely well known in our community, and he's a great example of why our in-person cohorts have been so important. But we'll come back to the lesson that he was doing. It's a lesson from our FOSS curriculum that Ms. Johnson prepared all the materials for and then sent home so that students could do a little bit of work on cause and effect and gravity. So we'll come back to that in a minute. Just like any year, we want to make sure that we are engaging students and supporting them. We do that lots of ways with our COST team, which is coordination of services, their intervention program, our English language development program, our in-person cohorts. And my favorite story about our in-person cohorts is on our very first day, we had a 5th grader who's larger than life. He's taller than me, but little inside. And he said, "I'm not coming back." And then for the 2 weeks that cohorts were on pause in January, he showed up at school multiple times and said, "Hey, I know there's no cohorts today, but can I stay here and do my work?" So a really important resource that we've been very proud to offer to our student community. On the last day of our in-person cohorts before pausing to get ready for hybrid, it was so evident that it was this cool multi-grade community that had been built. And that community was one of our cohorts was almost all boys, and they really provided us some opportunities to grow in patience. But one of them now asks me every day, "How old do I have to be to work at Santa Cruz Gardens?" So we're really excited about that and proud and relieved to know that we won't have to suffer or struggle to find staff to work here. Thinking about the future, though, is also very exciting, and it's, unfortunate but timely that we would all talk together about Don and his contributions to our district, and for Jade to share that video, because he has been working closely with our team as we've been dreaming together about having a science and garden program here at Santa Cruz Gardens. And so we've been working hard on that. We have a formation committee. Carolyn is a part of that. Jesse is a part of that. And many stakeholders from different areas. We have parents, teachers, and from that formation committee, there are multiple subcommittees working very hard on things like curriculum and instruction, grant writing, field trips, facilities and infrastructure, and then really building community partnerships. I'm really excited to announce that not this Friday, but next Friday, we'll be having our first professional development for staff on leveraging outdoor learning spaces. It was birthed from a desire to, during this time of COVID, be able to get kids outside and learning. But what's perfect about it is that it will allow us to think about the future and how we continue that practice even after hybrid and is over, because it will happen someday. We'll come back just to normal school. And then I wouldn't be a good principal if I didn't put out a plug for volunteers. So I wanted to let you know, Don said it in that video. I wrote it down while we were watching it. He said it takes community to raise a garden. And here at Santa Cruz Gardens, we are working hard every day to raise a human garden that we're very proud of. And to do that, we have a living classroom here on campus that we use to teach kids about the environment, but also about themselves, and give them opportunities to apply what they're learning in other areas. So we're going to get it ready for spring and celebrate Earth Day together on April 17th from 9:15 to 4. There are sign-up times of no more than 6 people per group so that families can join us, but we can do it safely. So if you would like to participate in that and support us on the 17th, we would love to have you. And that is it for now. We're excited to welcome back the rest of our grades in hybrid, but I will pause there for any questions.
Hop on in there, board members. Any questions or comments?
I just wanted to say, sorry.
There we go. Okay, there we go. Yeah.
I just wanted to say I loved your imagery of the human garden in addition to the plant garden. I thought that was really beautiful.
Yeah, no questions from me. Just a thank you for all of the incredible things that are happening up at the gardens. It's really wonderful to see. And now that my kids are a little older, I do wish I could be a fly on a wall in a TK Zoom. But I appreciate that we got the chance to see our little buddy in the video, and it's really.
Yes, thank you for the presentation. I like the first slide with the roller coaster beginning, and it's been a year like that, but our amazing staff pulled things together and it made it somewhat of a smooth landing. But yeah, thank you for the presentation. Looks like a lot of fun up there.
Lots of fun. Phil, I saw your hand. Anything, Phil?
Go ahead, Phil.
I'm curious, how are you going to do field trips?
So that's a good question, Phil. It's what we've really been looking at as a site. What field trips have we done historically? Do we want to continue those? The answer is, generally yes. But then really wanting to think thematically, so that a TK student in their mind can be like, oh man, I can't wait until fourth grade, because in fourth grade they go on this field trip, and really building a narrative arc for our students, not just of a single year at Santa Cruz Gardens, but during their whole time here. So that, once they're in fifth grade, we've been talking about community, and the cool thing is like the science standards align really well with social studies, for example. So in social studies and kinder, it's all about like yourself, and in science in kinder, it's all about observing the world around you. And then as you get through the grades, it expands and expands and expands, and then in fifth grade, it's really about your greater community and the community around you. So we've been talking about having fifth grade legacy projects, like what we want to leave a mark on students of Santa Cruz Gardens, but we want them to leave a mark with us as well. So thinking about field trips and how they can align with our content and our curriculum, and make sure that we're engaging students, not just here at Santa Cruz Gardens, but in the community as well.
Thank you. I just want to give appreciation. Thanks for all that you've done at the gardens over this past year. Lucky to have you.
Thank you.
Okay, I think that covers it. And if there's not anything else, we'll go ahead and move on to our next presentation. And thank you again, Carissa.
Yeah, thank you guys.
There you are. Have a good evening, unless you want to stick around and listen.
I'm
sorry.
So Ted,
yeah.
Do we need to ask about the public on this one?
Well, presentations, yeah, we could ask for if there's public input. Do we have any public input? Thanks, Phil.
Thanks for the reminder. And no, there is nothing on text.
Nothing on email.
No one on Zoom.
Okay. Thank you. All right, so let's move on to our discussion regarding racial justice and educational equity. Scott.
Good. Thank you, Ted. As has been mentioned a few times tonight, this is something many of us are involved in at different levels. It's really important and work with a lot of gravity, but it's also exciting work to be engaged in when there's synergy throughout the district. Again, I just like to harken back to kind of how this came to be a district goal, some of the events that we all saw on the news, as a society kind of sparked the conversation, and it really was a grassroots effort. It was a time where there was no doubt from looking at it with the superintendent lens, what should be the #1 goal of the district and the #1 focus on the district this year, and that was to engage in the work around racial equity. And so, of course, we had lots of good input about that, including a wonderful letter that was read by our Teachers Association, SEA, and really outlined some important steps that they saw. And from another outgrowth of that was to form the Racial Justice Task Force, and to really make sure that we're working with somebody with an established reputation. So we reached out to somebody that a few of us administrators had worked with, and that's Nicole Anderson and her group, which has included her colleague, Dr. Shelley Holt. So all of that momentum built, and of course we added to our school libraries books that were more racially inclusive. Great input from our school community on that, and have continued this work throughout the year. The work includes those 3 groups that have been mentioned: Administrative Council, the Racial Justice Task Force, and of course our board. And all of the work really focuses on, each time we meet, on 4 agreements, and that's to stay engaged, be willing to experience discomfort, because this is not work you can kind of just go through lightly. It takes really kind of getting down to your core and looking at implicit bias amongst other very challenging experiences. Speak your truth. And that's something that is, sometimes hard for folks, but I notice that each time we meet, I think more and more folks feel comfortable with that. And accepting non-closure, that this is not work that gets tied up in a nice little bow. And was even a main concern expressed as we started the work, like, let's make sure this isn't a checkbox that we check just to feel good about ourselves and move on, that this is deep and meaningful work. And that, again, it's not going to be wrapped up nice and neat. And so that's something that we've grown accustomed to, is accepting that non-closure. We've done a lot of foundational work, and that phrase go slow to go fast has been used regularly as a part of this work, because I think as educators, especially, a lot of times there's a tendency to jump to the solution without fully understanding the problem. So Nicole and Dr. Holt have really worked with us on making sure we understand some of the roots of the problem, the systemic nature of racism, and how it affects the students and families that we serve. We've done a lot of reading. Most recently, we've read a very powerful article in all the groups called "Avoiding Racial Detours." And I'll just go through this very briefly because it's been a major topic. So this article talks about, as organizations like ours engage in this work, sometimes there's some what maybe appear to be low-hanging fruit that are really like detours that can lead you in the wrong direction on not doing the deep work. And these detours are pacing for privilege, meaning that we can't just go and do this work at a rate that's comfortable. As I said, this work has to be, you have to be willing to experience discomfort. Something called the poverty of culture. A deficit ideology is another detour, meaning that this work can be looked at only from a deficit model rather than what can be gained from equity. And celebrating diversity, obviously good intentions, but often can be a detour that leads to superficial work on this topic. So a very powerful article that all of the groups have read and are reading and discussing in breakout rooms when we meet. And all of this foundational work, this intellectual pursuit part of it, is all leading up to an equity impact action plan. And in the Racial Justice Task Force, that's the group that will really take on the meat of that project. And we've done some work and identified the following subcommittees that are really diving into data to take a look at how can we make systemic changes that will lead to greater racial equity. Those subcommittees revolve around staffing, to see what we can do to make sure that our staffing better reflects the community we serve. Student discipline, and taking a look at ensuring that our own bias and own prejudices coming into our work as school leaders doesn't negatively impact certain traditionally underserved groups when it comes to student discipline. And also, of course, most important in a school district, curriculum and instruction, and taking a look to make sure that the materials and lessons that we provide to our students reflect racial equity. So this is such a big and broad and important topic. Sometimes it's hard to kind of condense down to a few talking points, but those are some of the major ones that we've been working on with a especially trained eye on that equity impact action plan. That will be something that we can walk away at the end of this year with some really definitive steps, but not just with a plan that maybe a few people have some connection to, but that we'll have definitively 3 groups connected to, and that we can continue to share out to the greater district as a whole. So I'll stop there, and I'll welcome either questions or hopefully conversation and input from several of the members, because everybody here serves in some capacity in this work.
Thank you. All right, gang. Go ahead and jump on in.
All right, fine. If you're not gonna tag us, I'll hop in. Thank you, Scott. That very thorough yet also succinct, I think, explanation of the work that's being done. And I just want to add in, I really appreciated kind of getting to be a fly on the wall and observe some of the work being done by the subcommittees at the Racial Justice Task Force last week. It's, I mean, I'm not someone who gets particularly emotional about things, but I was so incredibly touched by the commitment that our task force members have made, not just of their time, but really the energy and the heart that everyone is pouring into this. And we've got so many teachers and staff members and parents and people who have very, very, very full lives, and then they're hopping on these meetings, having done the homework, having put, again, just deep thought into it, and really contributing in such a meaningful way. It speaks, I think, to the love that people have for the district, and really just the investment, where people are thinking beyond, of course, the kids they're teaching this year or their own kids. I mean, this is like an investment of something that we all, think is going to be touching generations and generations and generations to come. So just for the board members who don't have the chance to sit on that committee and watch the work our subcommittee members are doing, I just want to convey how deep the work is and how admirable their commitment is.
Thank you.
I'll go ahead. I wanted to echo what you said, Amanda, with the subcommittee work. It just seemed like people were really invested in looking at every aspect of our school experience, from the little things to the big things. And I know that was one of the points made in the article that you mentioned, Scott, that there are little things and big things that matter, and everything should be examined. And by observing the work of the subcommittees, it was obvious that that's what they were doing, is just a lot of examination of the data and brainstorming and thinking outside the box, and just making sure that everything is covered and discussed. So I really appreciated that. That's it for me.
Thank you. Let's see, Jen?
I don't have anything to add. Thank you.
All right. All right. Well, thank you, Scott, for the presentation. Is there anything from the public?
There is nothing on text.
Nothing on email.
Okay,
We lost George, but I'm assuming there's no one on Zoom. Oh,
there we go. Gordon.
Yeah, just really quickly wanted to say I think it's really humbling and touching to see the commitment that this district is making to such a complicated issue. And I just think it's yeah, it's just really nice to hear how the approach has been of the Racial Justice Task Force and the work you guys are doing. And yeah, I really look forward to what's to come.
Come on, there we go. Thank you. All right, so with that, we'll move on to item 5C, which is discussion regarding COVID and gradually increasing in-person learning. Scott.
Thank you, Ted. So, gosh, what our whole world is revolving around right now in one little board discussion item. So I'll try to give a pretty thorough overview, and again, try to do that in the most concise manner possible. I'm going to start with just, the visceral experience of being at Soquel Elementary the last 2 days during their opening and dismissal times, as well as Main Street. But I spent my opening and dismissal times at Soquel. First, I would just like to say, so grateful to all the work that teachers and staff have done to get the schools ready. From every detail down to, painting the dolphins or the cougar paws down on the ground for social distancing. And boy, those kids, they know to go to their spot already. I mean, the routines it's amazing how fast teachers have ingrained the routines there. I also want to thank my administrative council for just never hesitating when I asked everybody to go out to the sites these first 2 days and lend a hand. I think even though everybody's super busy, it really just does shine a light that everybody does get that we only exist as a district office to support school sites. And all of that team really put their heart and soul into that work this weekend and had fun with it, remembering why we all exist in our jobs, and that's for students. The procedures couldn't have been more smooth at Soquel Elementary, the school that I was at. Safety was first and foremost with the drop off and screening procedures. There was an army of adults out there, everybody pitching in and welcoming students with bright and smiling faces. And any anticipated worry about students being afraid because parents had to drop them off, and couldn't come right up to the classroom were quickly dissipated. Students were excited and happy to come to class. And I say smiling faces. Of course, you can't see the smile under the mask, but you can tell when a child's face is lit up because they're excited to come to school. Dismissal is always a biggest challenge, even during the most normal of school times. And again, the dismissal procedures were so smooth and always with safety in mind, making sure students were lined up in a safe spot. But again, many adults out there making sure that the right student got in the right vehicle to go home. So I'm just so thankful. And then I was able to go into classrooms today with both Kristen at Soquel and Ronnie at Main Street. And I kid you not, I'm not just saying this to try to paint a rosy picture. If you did not know that today was the first day of school for this group, for cohort B, you would have never known it. If somebody would have said, oh yeah, they've been in school in person all year, you would have had no reason to not believe it. Students were focused, on task, doing productive activities, and already well into their new world and their new routines of going one at a time into the bathroom facilities and standing on their social distancing icons and wearing their masks. So I just can't offer enough gratitude to teachers, staff, administrators, everybody who made this first round of hybrid a huge success. With that, thinking on a little bit bigger picture, of course, the reasons these last 2 days were able to happen the way they did is because our case rate's going down and vaccinations are going up. Our case rate in the county has continued to plummet. It's in the metrics for the orange tier, but the earliest we can officially go into the orange tier is if we stay with those metrics, and at the end of March, we could go into the orange tier. And so, you know, all of those metrics continue to move in the right direction. You know, I know this is all of the information that we all listen to every night on the news, but it's because of all the work we're doing as a community, right, with vaccinations and our social distancing and mask wearing and all of those things. So we hope that those things continue all the way through spring break, and that everyone continues to be mindful of the more that those things go well, the more in-person learning we can gradually build up, which is our goal, is to gradually build up in-person learning to, who knows, you know, maybe next year to even consider, if the data continues in the right direction, a full reopening. We don't know that now, but boy, if all of the data trends continue the way they are, that option is certainly out there. But we'll continue to work with our staff and monitor all the data and continue to make safe plans to make that happen. We're bringing back, of course, our older students after spring break. And so when I say older students, we'll start at the elementary schools by adding on second and third graders to the kindergarten and first grade students who are already there, and our TK students. And then New Brighton on that first day back after spring break and after the professional development day, which would be April 6th, we'll bring back their first group of students, the sixth graders. So you can imagine the sixth graders who have never stepped foot in middle school will be very excited to actually spend their first day there in person. The following week, the week of April 12th, we'll bring back all of our other students, fourth and fifth grade at elementary school, and our seventh and eighth graders at middle school. So by that week, everybody will have a chance for in-person learning. Families continue to have a chance to remain in distance learning if they're not quite comfortable yet to return to in-person. The principals tell me that more and more families are choosing to, had originally chose to be in distance learning and are now opting into our hybrid program. We'd like to think that that's, you know, when the proof is in the pudding, and it's obvious that we're emphasizing safety and in routine, and we hope if families feel safe, more and more of those families continue to opt in. Down the road, of course, we're monitoring the data and seeing if we can go into the orange and even the yellow, and apparently there is even a green tier that is possibly going to be on the horizon, and we'll see where that takes us. And that's where we're at right now. Sure, there's a lot of other information I could put out there, but just very proud of the work that went into a long time of leading up to this hybrid program. One thing that we realized is that when this whole thing started, it was March 16th, 2020 was the first day that we, for lack of a better way to say it, canceled school because of the pandemic. And then on March 16th, 2021 was our first day of hybrid. So it's been, has been said before, a roller coaster of a year. I'm very pleased. One of the first messages I sent after getting back yesterday from SoCal was to our two union presidents, just to thank them for their collaboration in this, because it's taken everybody on deck, but we wouldn't have gotten here without true collaboration from our two unions. And so I'm just very grateful for them. And with that, I'll take a pause and take any questions or comments from the board.
Go ahead, Phil.
So Scott, I had to, hats off for putting the word pause in there. When I was at SoCal, all over the blacktop were multicolored paw prints, cougar paw prints.
Yeah.
So, and I was told, hey, take a pause. A friend of mine said to me, Phil, have you seen all these small humans out there walking around with backpacks on them? And I said, yeah, school's back in session again. So let me tell you what I saw. First off, thank you, Scott, for getting public safety alerted, because the highway patrol were active in front of SoCal. Apparently, people didn't know school was starting. They were on it.
Interject there real quick, Phil, because I'm a big believer in giving credit where credit is due. I can't take credit for that. That goes to our Soquel principal, Kristen Murphy, who is directly connected to somebody in the CHP, her husband.
Yeah, and she told me he brought some friends. Okay, so there's that, and then the sanitizing stations. So Michelle, very creative. I mean, I saw out there those kiosks for the stations were like $1 jillion, you know, so that was pretty cool. Let's see, the no lines. I was surprised. Even when there was a student who was a bit hesitant about getting out of the car, there just were only like 4 or so cars behind, and they moved through pretty quick. And so there was 4 or 5 people working the drop off, and so they had these different steps to go through. So it worked out pretty good. And that's it for me. Thank you, by the way, everyone. Thank you. It was so satisfying watching students going to school. You wouldn't think, but it was.
Yeah, Phil. I was amazed the students were standing on the stickers in the photos. They were doing a good job of staying apart. I'm glad you got to see that. Any other comments, Amanda? I'll look down there.
Sure. Amanda always likes to talk. Thank you. Thank you, Scott. I always appreciate the update and the good information. And I have I think a healthy dose of optimism for next year. So I'm so hoping that everyone continues all the good practices that we need, particularly with spring break, summer break coming up, right? Just remembering the hand hygiene, the face masks, the distancing, even as we get the reassurance that we can feel with more vaccinations. Just the vigilance is going to really pay off if we all just keep doing our part. So very excited about possibilities for the future, and it's just wonderful seeing. I didn't get to, my own kiddos aren't back yet, but getting to see the pictures and hear the stories of everyone, seeing the social media posts of everyone, first day of TK, first day of kindergarten. It's wonderful to see, and big kudos to everyone involved. And you can really tell the teachers also laid so much groundwork, obviously, in terms of their classroom agreements and their practices. And you know, if those kids knew to stand on their dots and knew how to get out of the car and all of those things, I'm sure so much of it was front loaded with their teachers in their Zooms in the weeks leading up to it. So really appreciative again of all the hard work going into it. It's an exciting time.
It is exciting. It's quite exciting. Jen.
I think I would just echo how amazing it was to see all our kids and everybody work so cohesively to have a safe reopening. And I can't help it. It seems like Scott has his hand up. So if you have, please feel comfortable to unmute yourself. But no, it was great. And thanks, Scott, for the update.
You're welcome. I just wanted to add in one thing that I made a note to mention and forgot while I was talking. And it's just a point of clarification on funding, and always want to be 100% transparent on these things. So SB 86 is guiding a lot of the work, although we were fortunate that the plans we made with all stakeholders lined up really well with the guidelines that did come out from SB 86. But one thing I gave a bit of misinformation on at the last board meeting, because at that time SB 86 guidelines were still fairly new, and I'll admit I was still processing them, is in regards to the April 1st deadline that has been established for schools to receive full funding related to SB 86. And so, and this is all one-time funding in nature, designed to be COVID relief in one form or another. And so a couple of things. One thing that was correct and is still correct is that although the deadline is April 1st, for us, that deadline would be April 6th, because days that are not scheduled on the calendar to be school days don't count against the district. So that's one thing. At that time, we were still in purple. And the information that we had been processing a lot as superintendents, or I should just say that I was processing, was that while in purple, to secure full funding, you would have to have everybody get back by that April 6th date for us in grades TK through 2. And we are and we're on point for that. What's changed now that we're in the red tier, and was true at that time, but I hadn't processed the information fully, is that if you don't have all of your elementary grades, which for us would include 4th and 5th, by that April 6th date, you do start to incur a penalty of 1% of your funding loss per day, per school day that you're not in session. And so our 4th and 5th graders aren't scheduled to be back till April 12th. And so that would be 4 days scheduled on our calendar of not having them back. So that's a 4% penalty. You could call it a penalty, or 4% that would be withheld. So for us, that's about $20,000, and we never sneeze in any money. Please don't take anything that I say the wrong way. We weighed this very heavily, but we really do value the gradual reopening that we've established, so that routines can be built in place and built upon in a smaller reopening, and valuing consistency and staying with the message that was out there, and letting families know that April 12th would be the date for 4th and 5th grade. So anyway, long story short, I just wanted to own that little bit of misinformation, and that when I said before that we would be on point for full funding by having TK through 2nd back, now that we're in the red tier, to get full funding, we'd really have to have all of our elementary grades back. And staying on the course we are, we will give up 4% of our funding, but we do not anticipate that loss of funding will in any way negatively impact any choices or resources that we have available to us. Sorry, that was a very long-winded way to just do a mea culpa.
Phil.
So I'm going to guess that this is not unusual, and it's probably going to be happening at other districts in the state, probably on a larger level. So I would guess that some appeal process will form.
I would just say that I think you got something there. Until we see it, in black and white, we don't know for sure. With LA Unified often being a big driver in the state and them not going back till sometime in mid-April, I think that certainly is in the realm of possibilities that the goalposts move a little bit. But even with that, it's still full transparency. Wanted to own where we are with it right now.
I'll go ahead. First, I want to thank everyone for making the process so smooth. And I just can feel the excitement in the air. It just seems like people have just an extra bounce in their step. So that's all very exciting. I know that we've been making decisions trying to be as mindful as possible of the science of COVID. And recently there's been some new findings. There was a study just that came out a week ago looking at over 500,000 students and 99,000 staff and teachers that basically found that there's no difference in COVID rates if students are 6 feet apart or 3 feet apart. And I'm just wondering if, given the new information, the new findings, the new science, if we would consider bringing our students back. I know that the minimum that we can do in California is 4 feet, but if we would consider bringing our students back at a 4 feet distancing, given the new findings that just came out.
So with 4 feet, then having students in class soon, right?
Yeah, so this will allow us to bring, hopefully, all of our students back at the same time, 5 days a week.
Mm-hmm. And so we're talking, thinking before next school year coming up, if we could fit more kids in the classroom going 5 days a week.
Yes, I think that's a worthy discussion to have.
Yeah.
So
go ahead, Scott.
Oh, sure. So great question. As we have found everything in this last year, it's an evolving science, and we get evolving information and we have to study it and react to it. I would just say that, like everything else we've done, as we grapple with any kind of new information like that, we'll work collaboratively with everybody, including our unions. We have memorandums of understanding, and they define some of the working conditions, such as physical distancing. So we can certainly continue down that road, and as we get new information, such as any change in physical distancing guidelines by the Department of Public Health. I think that the main thing, without being too Pollyannish, is the one thing everybody agrees on, regardless of role, is we all want students back. We all want more students back on campus. We all want to gradually increase in-person learning. The idea of taking that information and running with it quickly, just presents some challenges. Of course, I think as a collective community, we've overcome every challenge. So there's no saying we couldn't overcome these, but they would just have to be wrestled with, such as, the work that's been done, to develop a hybrid program. What does that mean if more students can come back in versus half of your students, right? And even if the math kind of allows for more students in the classroom, what does that mean in practicality in terms of the type of desks we have and the way rooms are situated? And so again, I don't pose any of those to be roadblocks. I just pose them as another series of challenges that if we want to increase in-person learning even more, that we would have to sit down together and talk about and figure out together.
And when you say together, who's together?
So again,
who's that? Are you talking about the board?
Oh, well, I mean, of course, the board,
yeah, okay.
The board's input, starts this kind of process for sure. If the direction is to ramp up the speed at which we're increasing in-person learning, and then I would say the broader we, of course, of everybody who has a stake in this, including our labor associations.
When do we come back after spring break? What's the date?
April 6th.
April 6th. So with Carolyn Specs, everybody is pretty much vaccinated or on the way to being vaccinated.
Everybody has the opportunity to have the vaccination. Yeah, everybody's had the opportunity to have the vaccination. Yes.
Right. So having everybody in class after spring break.
Is that a question to me, Ted?
That is that something that we could work towards if the board desires? So I'm saying, what if we go back to 5 days a week, everybody, all the kids in the classroom after spring break?
So what I would say is, any directive from the board, what I would do is start engaging in conversation with everybody that would have a stake in that, which is obviously everybody, teachers, staff, parents, everybody. It would be an ambitious and fast timeline, but again, we've done ambitious and fast timelines before. And we would, again, the complexities are, even if the guidelines, even if we would agree to guidelines of less social distancing than 6 feet, what do the parameters of our room really allow, even with 4 feet or 3 feet, right? And so if we're talking full, regular, 100% in-person learning, there's some real complexities just physically, even with those reduced social distancing guidelines. And then again, thinking through the work that would have to be done because quite honestly, it would be very challenging to consider 100% of the students in the classroom right now, even with those reduced physical distancing guidelines. So if we're talking more than half, like greater in-person learning, having to think through the work that's been done on those hybrid plans and what that means to that, there'd be a lot of collaboration and discussion that would have to go into making that, just like so much collaboration and discussion went into rolling out this version of hybrid.
Okay. Phil. Phil.
Yeah, so maybe not at this time, but we should soon talk about SBAC.
So we absolutely should. The things have been moving fast on that front, and it is connected to this item. So that's thank you to Phil for bringing it up, and that's why I feel comfortable responding to it. Jessica has been knee deep in reading the almost daily updates that what's allowed. Obviously, you know, the generic term is flexibility that the U.S. Department of Education has granted states. And that flexibility kind of gets reinterpreted regularly. So again, though, like I think I'd like to say everything that we do, we're opening that discussion up amongst everybody who has a stake in it before we make some final decisions. But that work is going on, and we can certainly share more information with the board as we transverse through it.
Any Amanda?
Amanda unmuted.
Yeah.
Yeah, thank you, Carolyn, for bringing up that recent study. I'd read about it as well, and I'm very interested. I mean, I think after spring break is a very, very aggressive timeline, and even if it were possible, given a whole other host of factors, I could imagine that would be very challenging for families in terms of, you know, the quick whip around with schedule changes and childcare and this, that, and the other. But I am interested in, you know, if hearing more about it at our next report, you know, pursuing some more discussions as Scott feels are appropriate with the folks to figure out. I just don't want. Sorry, my computer beeped. I'd like to make sure, I think it already is, but that this is on the front burner in terms of getting ourselves ready for a full reopening plan as soon as we possibly can. And I worry sometimes that the various guidelines that we have to follow can be behind the curve in terms of following the science. And so I'm just hoping that we can be as proactive as possible so that even if the CDP, CDE, you name the acronym, takes longer than we'd hope to change the guidelines that we're bound to, that we're just ready to go. So whatever data you can give us next time, I'd really appreciate that. And then, you know, as far as the measuring space in classrooms and the like, do you have a number, like a really, really rough percentage of what percentage of families are choosing to do all distance right now?
It started at 20%. When I checked last week, it was at 15%. And I think the number has continually decreased. But I don't have a firm number right now because it's kind of been changing on the daily.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, Phil.
A quick question, and you don't have to answer now, but typically, how many square feet is a elementary classroom? And I think middle schools are a little bit bigger. But if I'm looking at 24 or 5 people in a classroom, I'm thinking I need at least 800 square feet. And so does that mean we like move furniture out and all that stuff?
If I remember right, the answer is 960. Michelle will correct me if I'm wrong. Or confirm if I'm right.
Yes, you are correct. A typical classroom is 960. Kinders are a little bit bigger. The middle school follows around 960 as well. And that's 960, but not 960 in a square necessarily. It could be, our classrooms come in a variety of different angles. And yes, to your question, Phil, in order to make that work, all furniture would have to be removed from the classroom in order to, because a lot of cabinetry are built in, and that the footprint is 960, but cabinetry comes out into that footprint. So, yeah.
Yeah, it'd be a shame to take the crowbar to that new stuff we just put in, but I guess we'd have to.
And
Phil, you
that's,
know how I feel about those classrooms. They're my babies.
yeah, right. So then in other words, you're saying that if the kids were in the classroom at 4 feet apart, is that 4 feet also from the instructor, the teacher? Or is the adult 6 feet?
No, I think if we were going that direction, it would be 4 feet for any person. But teachers do move in and out, obviously, like of an instructional zone. Sometimes you have to get closer than that, but generally it'd be 4 feet for everybody if we move in that direction. Again, right now our agreement is 6 feet. Just to be clear. I don't want anybody else to make a decision here on this tonight.
But if we go to 4 feet, then basically we still couldn't get all the students in one classroom.
No.
We'd have to do like a class size reduction. Or
I think we'd have to work with everybody to develop some different options. That would be pretty complex, right?
So basically we'd still be at a hybrid program if we went to 4 feet.
Yeah, I guess you could say it would still be a hybrid. It just wouldn't be a 50-50 hybrid as it is now. If we're gonna start kind of, getting down into the details of the program.
I mean, it'd be great to get specifics, and I know that a lot of measurements need to happen for that to be presented to us. I did want to kind of tie it in with a discussion that we had 2 weeks ago about, I posed the question about our small group cohorts, and I remember you mentioning, Scott, that we have a specific number. I can't remember the specifics, but that would have to come down significantly under hybrid. And even the original number is much less than the principals would have hoped to have served in our schools. So in essence, under hybrid, those students that needed the most, except for a very small group, are actually getting less in-person support than they did when we were in distance learning. And of course, we're not moving back to distance learning, but I just want us to be aware of that. And we've been talking about equity a lot. And that, to me, is one of the major pieces. And even if we can't fit everybody, if we can at least make it so that we serve the biggest group of students that we can, and include as many of those students that are not going to be served under our current hybrid model.
Yeah, thank you for that. So the MTSS subgroup or cohorts that we've been serving prior to hybrid have been reduced. So those students were identified through lots of input and identification. And we were serving about 7% of our overall student population identified as needing supports. And with many of those staff that had been supervising cohorts, obviously it's not teachers because teachers are busy, we're busy distance teaching. And so many other staff, classified staff, have stepped on to supervise those cohorts. As we bring hybrid programs back, to your point, those staff need to go back and do their other jobs in many cases. So we've had to reduce from about 7% to about maybe 2 or 3% of our students. So, the list of prioritized students just kind of gets reduced. And so the core issue with that as we move into hybrid is staffing. But I hear your point about trying to figure out a way to incorporate those students more frequently in-person learning. If we can find some agreement to broadening the amount of students that can be in a room based on social distancing guidelines.
Well, we're not going to meet for a month, so we're not going to meet before spring break. So if we were going to look at the numbers and everything, we really couldn't really discuss this until April 21st. If we're interested. Personally, I like to see, I am one who would like to see the kids back in the classroom, and that's me. However, with everything that you said and bringing items back to a meeting, it looks like we wouldn't really be able to discuss this until April 21st.
Yeah, obviously the next board meeting. And I just have to say, and I know you meant, like when you said you want to see students back in the classroom, I know you're kind of just probably speaking for all of us, and I just want to accentuate that we all want students back in the classroom. We all want more students engaged in in-person learning. So just for full clarity, that certainly isn't anything that any group is in disagreement about. I think it's the pace that is the question here, and whether monitoring the data and seeing how we progress towards the opening of next school year versus hastening that process and increasing what we've put in place with hybrid this year in April or May. Is that's the big differential point, not whether we want in general more students in class. I know every single person connected to the district wants that. So I've definitely, this has been a great discussion, and perhaps Ted or one of the board members can, this isn't an action item, of course, but no. It definitely feels like part of a directive or part of a direction, I should say. And so maybe just some clarity on what that direction statement is, whether it's let's explore and talk about it and come back with some measurements and some just further discussion on April 21st. That's a kind of a direction I heard, but I want to clarify so I walk away with the right direction. That's different than we want to see. We want to see greater numbers of students in the classroom in April or May. I just want to make sure I walk away with the right direction from the board.
Phil, go ahead.
So perhaps we should just, how we did for the cohorts and then for the hybrid, is just start developing a color-based, tier-based plan. So we get here, we're going to do this. We get here, we're going to do this, and you have that on the shelf ready to go. So when you can do that. You mentioned something about collecting the data, and so I just have to jump in here and say I'm a total bottom line data guy, and all objective is the best. But I will tell you that subjective data is really important right now. Emotions are running high, and if that isn't taken into account, then all this other stuff is you're going against a heavy current. So you really have to take into account people's feelings, because what's stronger, reason or feelings?
Right.
I think there's a lot of wisdom in that. People have put their heart and soul to get to this point, and we want to continue to build on that in whatever direction we go.
All right. So it sounds like we're going to sit on this until the 21st, and you'll bring back what data, room measurements, fitting kids in. Who knows what happens April 21st too? That's a month away.
Yeah.
So a month and some change.
I think like so many times, I think we'll continue to get new science and new guidance reports, from the Department of Public Health and elsewhere, that will inform these discussions. And, again, I will just say, maybe this is to Phil's point, is, whatever the math problem is to say X number of square feet in a classroom, this many feet of, social distancing, we can and will bring those numbers back. Again, I just want to emphasize that it's often more complicated than that when you get into a classroom, and maybe that's something like we can invite board members to come in and see, is like, let's move this table and see, what angle do you have to put it at, so that these two students, are not next to each other. I know that sounds, like really probably in the weeds, but it's more of that than it is like a math problem to pencil out on paper.
Okay.
I guess there's the obvious question of spring break, and it just makes moving ahead quickly a little bit more difficult. But I just would encourage us to. Definitely we need the data on measurements. That would be very helpful. But I would just encourage us to be, if we decide to go in that direction, to be nimble. And I feel like any week that we can have more students in is worth it. I'm just thinking of the model that they used in Europe a year ago, where students in several countries came back in June. And of course, they did not have very many weeks of school left, but they still came back. And then they had their summer break, but they had a functioning model that they could fall back when they came back in August or September. And I really do feel like no week is going to be wasted if we want to make it happen. Like I said, there's just a lot of students that with every passing week, they're not getting the support that they need. I really strongly believe in that.
Thank you, Carolyn. I do understand, you know, the in-person part of that is undoubtedly true. You know, I think all staff members have sought to support students in whatever way they can, but I hear you loud and clear that the in-person component is, you know, was minimal before, and is, while it's grown somewhat, it's still not 5 days a week now.
Right. Okay. Do we have anything from the public or Gordon?
I don't have anything on text to start with that.
Gordon, you have anything to say?
Yeah, I would just reiterate, I think what Scott said earlier is that, you know, we do all want kids back in the room, back in the classroom. I taught in the classroom today, my cohort, and it's just a joy, and it's so much different, obviously, than teaching on Zoom, as you would imagine. But, you know, like Scott said, we do have the agreement on health and safety, and that does include a guarantee of 6 feet as part of the return for hybrid. And I think, you know, it's right to look at new guidance from CDC, CDPH, any of those agencies, and sort of reconsider things as science and research tells us more about how COVID spreads in classrooms. I think that's all well and good. I think the idea of doing that by spring break is a little daunting for teachers that are currently planning their return. Like I said earlier, you know, several teachers are just getting tables in their classrooms right now. The reopening committee at the middle school has been working for months on the idea of having kids on campus 2 days a week and working off of that. And so I think we have these great plans in place and you know, really worked out a lot of the nuts and bolts and small details that seem small when we're talking about it on a district-wide level, but when it's my own classroom, it is a much bigger detail, right? Those things like how do we line up when it's time to wash our hands, kinds of details, you know, make a lot more seem a lot bigger on the ground than they probably do, you know, on a district-wide level. And so, you know, I think we don't want to cause undue anxiety for families and parents either, and with these kinds of quick turnarounds either. And it does feel like, you know, having a different direction before spring break would probably cause some of that is my thought and my opinion, but I do agree with looking at science and guidelines as they come in.
Thank you, Gordon. Anybody else?
Nothing on email.
No one on Zoom.
Okay. We have Rob reading here.
He's here for a different item.
Okay, very good. All right. All right, so then we're going to leave it at April 21st with a long sheet of data. Okay, so we'll leave it till April 21st then. Okay. And thank you for everybody's input and opinion. It's valued, very valued too. Okay, so safe that we move on to item 5D, and it's not Scott, it's board policy, chronic absence and truancy discussion, first reading. Eric.
Good evening, everybody. The board policy for chronic absence and truancy has been updated, and it wants to reflect what we're doing on the ground at sites. And there have been things like trauma-informed approaches, tiered approaches to reducing chronic absenteeism. And we want those policies to reflect what we're doing.
Okay. Board members, I'm sure you've read through all this, and does anybody have any questions, clarifying questions at all? All right. Anything from the public?
Nothing on text.
Nothing on email.
Nothing on Zoom.
All right, let's move on to 5E. Eric, and this is regarding board policy on mental health and first reading.
Yeah, this one's a new policy about mental health, and we want to promote that and promote students' emotional well-being. And this includes instruction, staff training, crisis intervention, counseling services and referrals. It's something that our counselors are doing, and our counselors and psychologists are integrating these approaches already, and we just want some board policy to back us up on that.
Great, thank you. Board members, any questions, comments? Okay, no unmuting. Oh, Phil, go ahead.
So the item says that it's both updated and a new. So it's new, right? The first paragraph says it's an update, but the second paragraph under status says it's new. So it's new, right?
Yeah, it's new since 2019. There was a new law, and so we're getting it in. I think a lot of the board policies were updated in 2018, and so we're getting this one in.
Well, I think it's a different question, Eric, is whether this is a brand new policy or whether this is an update of a previously existing policy. And I do not believe this is a brand new policy to Soquel School District. This is a district that this is a policy that already existed and we're tweaking, right?
No, this is brand new. I didn't find it in our board policies. So yeah.
Oh, okay. Okay. Good clarification.
No, I saw that too, where it was the background is continuing to update, and then second paragraph is a new policy. And the way I looked at it, there was no scratch out, so I figure it was all new in there too. No bold or scratch out. So I took it as a whole new policy.
Yes, good clarification. Yes, it is brand new. Sorry for that was my mistake.
No worries. I should have looked at that. I've never introduced a new policy.
Oh, we got to figure it out. Okay, so if that's it from the board, anything from the public? Comments?
Nothing on text.
Nothing on email.
Nothing on Zoom.
All right. One more discussion item. Back to you, Scott.
All right. So this
that's meetings and notices. Our board, it's a bylaw.
Yes, thank you. Meetings and notices, a board bylaw. This is one of those occasions where the policy or the code takes a little while to catch up to the practice, but we know obviously during COVID-19 and virtual meetings that we've had a lot more use of teleconference locations or virtual meetings, and this policy is adapted and updated to reflect that, and also provide a little bit more guidance on what board members can and can't do in social media forums. And so if you take a look at page 1 of 7, you will see some of the updated language in that third paragraph, that it's not just that the board gathers at the same time and place, but is instead defined as the location, including telephonic location.
Mm-hmm.
And then some other just clarification on what takes place, taking action, not just deliberating. And then in the next paragraph, it again spells out a little bit more about social media platforms and what board members can and can't do on that. So obviously, as we are tonight, meeting virtually, it's been a big change this past year, and this policy just kind of takes that practice and codifies it. That's the intended change here.
Any comments or questions from the board? Phil?
So where there isn't any italics or bolds means the existing policy. And if that's the case, then are we supposed to be inviting the public into our homes now? And are we supposed to be taking roll call for every action item?
Where are you referring to, Phil?
I saw that too. He's is about when you do teleconferencing, you're supposed to do a roll call on items, action items.
And that's in
Yeah, that's in here. And
in regular meetings or emergency meetings?
No, we're talking. Well, this is all teleconferencing.
Well,
when we're see, the thing is, originally what it was is that, let's say if a quorum was in a meeting, an in-person meeting, and then you had a board member who was off in a whole nother state, and they were teleconferencing into the meeting, a roll call was supposed to be called. So this is new to where it is saying that, for instance, like our meetings right now, an action item would have to be a roll call according to this policy. However,
I saw Jen's hand up, and then I'd like to go after her. Whenever, I'm sorry, Ted, I didn't mean to interrupt.
No, go ahead. No, go ahead.
I'll go first. So I think there is a wording in here that doesn't encompass what we're doing. So the telephonic location. So when you're talking about telephonic, yes, you do a roll call because no one can see cues or different things. So that makes sense that that's needed for action items because you're only hearing people. So if you couldn't hear verbally what they said, so there's that part of this, because what we're doing right now is a video conferencing. And do I understand correctly that we record this? We go. We record this. We actually even post the video recording, even though that's not required. We really, I mean, we go way above and beyond with that. Like, we really could just post the audio recording of these, but this is a video conference, so maybe that phrase needs to be brought in this, so that we don't have to do maybe roll calls.
So the key word is telephonic, which is telephone, and not video.
So if you look at page 6 of 7 on the draft, under teleconferencing, in the very first sentence it says through audio and/or video. So we should be doing roll call for every action items because this is existing policy. If it's not italicized or bolded, then it's existing policy. And then 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then 5, all paragraph, all locations should be accessible to the public.
Right.
It's existing policy.
So if I'm looking at the policy and I'm looking at the discussion about the roll call vote, and I believe that comes under emergency meetings. And so that would be a meeting that we would call, with 24-hour notice, not a regular meeting.
It might be there, but it's also under the section on page 6 called teleconferencing.
I mean, I'd like us to consider that this policy does not have to be followed to the letter right now because we are not physically permitted to all be
that's true
in one space yet. So the design of this policy is for the situation where most of us are together, but one or two, some people are calling in, but the design of this policy is not for our current situation where every single person participating is participating by video. And I just don't think the legislative intent here was for us each, for example, to have to post the location of our personal homes and open the door of our personal homes where some of our children might be in the bathtub, for example, right now, right? So I don't think that this is the intent here. I mean, I'd be happy to revisit this policy later if we need to wait a couple months for a little bit of a less COVID world, as the Brown Act also is probably going to be brought back into play. Those are my 18 cents.
Right. No, that's how I understand it too, is that the Brown Act has been relaxed, and we could do a yay or nay without a roll call for every action item. And teleconferencing, I always thought it wasn't visual, but it does say video on there too. So I always thought, with the word telephone or whatever, it's not visual. And here we're in the SoCal squares, and we are saying yay and nay, and the public could see us.
And I will tell you too that the very first paragraph under teleconferencing is moved on circumstances for having the meeting. Don't care. This is just how you do it.
Right.
Yeah,
right.
So I'm feeling like didn't do a very good job with this one. I apologize to the board for not being clear, Phil. What I can do is bring this back next time as another first reading, and I can bring along with it, the guidelines, that we're working under during the pandemic. And so we can, I'm confident that everything we're doing is in compliance right now. And perhaps I shouldn't have brought this item at this time, but I'll bring it back again with the additional guidelines we're working under now, so that we can do a more thorough reading. And again, I apologize to the board. I let you down on this one.
No, it's like you said, it's all timing too right now. And yeah, we could bring it back just as another reading on the 21st, and then I might just geek out more on it too. So, and take a look into it as well. So with that, if there's nothing else from the any other board members, I'm sorry, Scott.
Oh no, there is from the public. I thought you were going to the public. Sorry.
Well, I am.
Okay.
You beat me there.
I had two questions, both from teacher Emily Maddox. The first one is the board planning to return to in-person meetings starting on April 21st. And so that is what we're trying to make happen. We're working behind the scenes on the technical part of that and what that can mean for social distancing. For example, more than likely in the PAC at New Brighton. But there, a whole host of technical issues that need to be covered with that. Is, we're going to continue on Zoom so that we can live stream on YouTube, and what might that mean for audio feedback, talking into Zoom while also needing to talk, in the larger area versus, with the microphone. So we're working on all that behind the scenes, but we are working towards figuring out all the challenges so that we can meet in person with proper protocols, social distancing, number of people in the room and everything on that April 21st meeting. Basically with the mindset that we're asking our students and teachers and staff to come back for in-person opportunities and trying to walk in alignment with that with our board meetings. The other question that was posed was clarification. Amanda just mentioned that the board is not permitted to meet in person. What is the qualification for the board to meet in person? Does it align with school reopening? I don't think that's of course, Amanda can speak for herself, but I don't think that's exactly what she said. I don't know if you want to address that, Amanda.
Sure. I mean, I think what I meant sort of was generally during the time that we couldn't typically, be in the boardroom, for example, right? We can't be having meetings publicly the way that we typically would. So as you mentioned, Scott, we're looking at being in a larger venue and having some in-person meeting. I think that basically covers it. I was trying to kind of talk about the way we've been practicing throughout the year due to public health necessity. But I do just kind of want to piggyback a little bit, if possible, when we have this discussion on this bylaw again next time, I would really appreciate just a small little bit of like kind of Brown Act 101 on why it is board meetings, are are held with the transparency and in public as much as possible, et cetera, et cetera. That would be nice for us as well as anyone who might be viewing. If that's possible, that would be appreciated.
Absolutely.
You mean when we were back in person, or
at the next meeting while we're talking about this policy? You know, like the second sentence is in accordance with state open meeting laws, the Brown Act. So just a little couple minute refresher on Brown Act. I think we've had this really wonderful growth in participation, or at least viewership, by having our meetings on Zoom, and there's a balance there with having virtual meetings, but also being true to the requirements of the Brown Act, as that will be put back in place formally. And maybe that's calling for an entirely different discussion. Just something I'm interested in us talking about.
Before the changes, the way the Brown Act was is that the quorum had to be in-house meeting. And then if other members were outside, then they did their teleconferencing and with posting the agendas and the whole bit. And now with the whole lifting of the Brown Act, is they're saying that a quorum has to be within the school district, but not in the boardroom, but a quorum has to be within the district.
Yeah, you know, if I could just chime in one last time, you know, reflecting on this policy and how I should have brought it. You know, there's the spirit of the of the bylaw and of the Brown Act in general, obviously, and then there's the technicality of this board bylaw, which, you know, I didn't do a good job on. I would just say that, you know, to the board's credit, the spirit of open and transparent communication during this last year, you know, just like our teachers were thrown in the position of suddenly figuring out distance learning, so were we suddenly thrown into the, you know, how to figure out to do a thoroughly distance board meeting. I would just like to say that I think the board has gone above and beyond to include participation via text, via email, via Zoom, and I think, to Amanda's point, you know, like it has, if anything, has maybe increased access to public comment and public participation in the board meeting. And then what part of that can we hold on to as we transition back? So the spirit of all of this, well in place, but good food for thought on going back on the technicality and the precise words in this board bylaw to do a better job and make sure we're all clear on what we're talking about.
Yeah, on that, Scott, is that I found it interesting that a board bylaw came in from you, because it's basically the board's, you know, it runs the board, basically, you know, the board bylaws, and we're the ones that really, in a way, should bring it forward, or if we notice something, it's, you know, it's how we run things, right? Instead of the superintendent. I mean, that's a whole nother issue. I look, yeah.
That is a whole other issue. I don't know how the board, unless I suppose the board can go into CSB regularly and look at the updates and bring those forward on their own. But I would think that that's something that you would want your staff to do.
Okay.
And then you
Phil,
always
I know,
consider it and have the final approval, of course.
All righty.
So are we submitting a safety plan to the public health folks here in the county? So we have to have signage and all that other stuff to have a meeting. So they have to approve that, don't they?
So if you're talking about the COVID safety plan, that does get submitted to public health. There is nothing there, you know, regarding Brown Act or anything like that.
If we're going to hold an event and it's going to have X number of people, I believe we're supposed to have a safety plan in place. You know, there's got to be signage at the door. There's got to be how you come in and how you go out, and all that stuff has to be submitted to the county public health. And then they decide if you checked off all the boxes and if it's an actually safe thing. So the restaurants and stuff all do them, you know.
Yes, so we would make sure that given
Yeah, we
whatever
don't.
year we're in at that time, that we're following all the guidelines, for sure.
Okay. All right, I think that with that, we're gonna bring it back as a discussion again on the 21st.
Yes, I will bring it back as a first reading again.
All right, so safe to say we go on the action items? Or, okay. And also, I just want to make a comment too, is that after the first reading, when it's a second reading, we're putting them into the consent agenda. So next meeting, two of the three items will go into the consent agenda for a second reading. Action items, okay. Michelle, let's consider approval of the second interim budget report for SoCal Union Elementary School District.
Good evening, you guys. As always, the most exciting and best for the last of the evening. I love presenting my budgets to you guys. So I'm going to once again try to share my screen. Not the master of it, but I think I got it. All right, are we good? Yeah, oh, yes, can everybody see?
Mm-hmm.
Awesome, okay. So good evening. So this evening I'm presenting to you second interim. I just want to start off by saying our second interim has a positive certification, which means that in the current year and in the 2 out years of our multi-year projections, we have a positive ending fund balance. So that's our yay we're starting off with. Our current budget, our current 2021-22 budget, goodness, I am so sorry. It is late. Let me get my numbers straight. Our 2021 budget is up to date with the current governor's proposed January budget for the 21-22 school year. So there was a variety of items that were added in that could reflect over multiple years, some of it being some of our deferrals, some of our cash flow, and some proposed funding that I'm going to talk about a little bit later this evening. And also our multi-year projections reflect the out years, not only the proposed 21-22 budget, but also any proposed COLAs that the governor has put into effect for the 22-23 school year and beyond. So a couple of our funding that we've currently received are our CARES and ESSER funding that I've talked to the state, the board about a couple of times now, are $1.2 million. To date, we've spent roughly $950,000 of the $1.2 million. We've spent most of that money, the bulk of it, on upgraded technology and platforms and infrastructure for instructional purposes. So we are on target to spend our monies by the June 30th, 21 date. And right now we're looking at, mainly based on our new proposed ESSER 2 and ESSER 3 funding that I'm going to talk about a little bit later from the federal government and from some of the stimulus money that's coming in from the state. We can defer over about $200,000 since those funds don't have to be spent until 2022. These twos are killing me. I'm sorry, you guys. So two of the funding that's being offered through the state is what we've talked about in the last couple board meetings, was the in-person learning grant. Approximately $530,000 will be coming to our district. It's a percentage of our LCFF funding, and Scott had referred to earlier, roughly 1% per day when full implementation isn't done by April 1st or the first day of instruction after April 1st. And the second component is the Expanded Learning Opportunities Grant, which is about $1.1 million, where those funds are directly targeted to expanding after school and before school interventions, summer school, and tutors, and anything to bring our learning loss mitigation up. And Jessica is working very hard on implementing that $1.1 million in a very robust summer school that we'll be offering. At the time of the presentation, I had only received the estimated ESSER 2 funding that was proposed in December by the federal government. Our district is set to receive around $900,000 for those funds. All of this funding, maybe the in-person learning grant funding is a little bit more restrictive in a different way, but most of this funding is targeted in exactly the same way: technology, infrastructure, HVAC, learning platforms, tutors, expanded summer school. All these things fall within the components of all of our spending. At the time, we had not been given what our proposed ESSER 3 funding was going to be. It looks like right now about $2 million additional funding will come in through ESSER 3. There's a few other ties to ESSER 3 and how that can be spent. So we're still talking and looking about how we can implement that. The good thing about this is we do have a couple of years to spend this funding. So there's no great push right now to come up with, as we had in the past, where we had this like 6-month window to spend the bulk of the money rather quickly. Looking at the highlights out, STRS and PERS contributions are continuing to go up with no relief at this time from the state. We're hoping maybe with May revise, there'll be some buy downs on STRS and PERS as proposed, but right now that's not looking too good. So in our multi-year projections, we still have a pretty hefty increase year over year. When you look at our 3000s, those are our health and welfare and our benefits lines to compensate for the PERS and STRS increases. In the current year, this was not presented at first interim. At that time, we were still working on our current budget and our funding. Due to the fact that free and reduced applications are not required to be turned in for this fiscal year and all kids are able to eat free, which is, we've all said, a wonderful thing, it has directly affected our child nutrition services program. So right now we're looking at contributing roughly $150,000 to the program to break even. I just want to point out that Kathy and her staff work extraordinarily hard. She has gone about 9 months with reduced staff to try to save for a further savings while we were in full distance learning. And now that we're expanding into hybrid, we're actively looking to replace those positions because her kitchens just can't run without that additional staff now that all sites are up and running. I can tell you this is not unique to our district. I've spoken to the other CBOs in the county and we are all kind of in the same boat based on this. We're feeding the community, which is a good thing, but it does come as a contribution. One of the good things though is our ESSER funding can in a way backfill and compensate that $150,000. So by the time I present to you guys our unaudited actuals, I'm hoping that number will be a little bit less. Also, we got good news. They've extended the waiver through September 30th for Feeding for All. I'm really happy, but this is going to be an odd timing. If it's only extended through September 30th, our count that we base our supplemental funding on is our CBEDS, which, as you know, is the first Wednesday in October. So if we cannot get actively our free and reduced applications, it will then further most likely reduce our CBEDS and our supplemental, which in the current year, we took a pretty good hit on, which we're backfilling in other ways due to the fact that we have the ESSER and the state funding. Our unrestricted unassigned revenues are down about $93,000 from what I presented to you at first interim. These are some contracted services that had to be added to our budget and some additional legal fees that had to be added to our budget in the current year. Right now, they're projecting a 3.84% COLA for the 21-22 school year. So you'll see in your multi-year projections, which is on page 172 of the docket. I know it's like almost the last page for you guys. You'll see a pretty significant jump, and we are also being held harmless for our ADA and our enrollment in the 21-22 school year. So we'll continue to keep our 19-20 ADA and enrollment numbers for our funding. And you'll see very large fund balances in the current and next year. And then you'll see them significantly drop off in the 2 out years. And that's due to the fact that our enrollment will catch up with itself and we have to compensate for that 150 kids that we lost in the current year. Oops. As I said, enrollment is down about 150 students from the 19-20 year. Where right now enrollment is projected to remain down for, we're not sure how many years. So when you look at our projected enrollment within our SACs and when you look at the multi-year projections, right now I'm projecting a flat enrollment for the next 3 years based on our current enrollment and current ADA. It's very conservative. We just don't know. If we come back full blown in the fall, we may garner back some kids that we lost through charters and private schools, but it's hard to tell if those kids have left the state, left the county. it's just, we just don't know. So for conservative reasons, I just projected us flat. And again, we've restored some of our frozen positions that we've held over the last year, specifically child nutrition services, yard duty services, and some instructional aides that were not needed until we went back to hybrid. Looking ahead, the impact, again, of the state and federal economy, you just don't know. If right now we're projected on an upward turn, so if that continues, I mean, our revenues for the state are projected higher than what were estimated, but they're still lower than what we thought we would be a year from now. So it's kind of, we just don't know. We have continuing construction projects. My next agenda item is going to address that specifically and how the impact on our budget will have. Enrollment, negotiations, technology, child nutrition services. These are all things I've been talking to you guys now about for the last year. Some of these are just very unknown. We had a great opportunity. We spent about $450,000 in upgrading our technology on our Chromebooks and laptops, but we have another slew of Chromebooks that are going to start aging out, and we're looking at having to upgrade those as well. The good thing is that we have been able to bring our Chromebooks to a 1-to-1 district-wide. So through this, which is great, because before the pandemic, I think we were roughly around 2 through 8. And so we were able to add those additional Chromebooks in. And again, just a big thank you to my staff, all my staff, business staff, maintenance, operations, tech, Kathy. I don't think it's a big secret. Kathy has been very, very open. This will most likely be her last year with the district. And so there's just going to be big shoes to fill. And so we've been working on that. And Steve and his staff right now are somewhat reduced in maintenance, and we have a driver out as well. So he's working on a short list as well. So and Kathy with her staff being reduced, I just can't thank them all enough for everything that they do. And I'll open it up to questions from everyone.
Thank you, Michelle. Go ahead, Carolyn. Yeah, go ahead.
I had a question about enrollment. Do we have data with regard to enrollment for next year and what that looks like? Even though it's not going to be the full numbers, but just a sense.
I can chime in on that. We're working currently on just looking at rolled over numbers, and then, projections. Projections for kindergarten and TK are always challenging, never more so than this year. So, but we're trying to base it off the traditional numbers that we have. So we're working on that, and I think that the flat enrollment projection is the right way to go. It could end up being a little bit higher. Our principals are certainly engaged in the process of doing whatever they can to, as Michelle alluded to, see who can we invite back that maybe have gone off to charters and privates. But even with that hopeful optimism, I do think that the enrollment projection, that currently exists is the right way to go. Did that answer your question?
Sure. I mean, I just want to get a sense if it's gonna dip further or if it's gonna stay the same. And it sounds like we're thinking hopefully stay at least the same, if not maybe increase a little bit.
Yeah, I think definitely flat. And then, but again, a lot. I'm hopeful, and I think if you ask our principals, they're very hopeful that we will get some of those families back. So it could be higher if our hunch is right, but we can't budget on hunches, right? That's the challenge.
Part of that, Carolyn, is we like as CBOs across the county as we talk, and part of that discussion is enrollment and our thoughts on that, and we kind of all are on the same page. Very extremely conservative. We all hope to get them back, but like Scott said, when I present our adopted budget in June, I'll have a better sense of our multi-year projections at that point, because by June, we might have a better idea of some of our families that we might be able to garner back, and we can make adjustments at that time. Also, I apologize. One thing that is part of our multi-year projections is natural attrition due to the drop in enrollment from the current year, which would fall in line with some of the savings that we have in the out years. So our salary projections always, I tack on a 1%, which is a natural a step and column movement for teachers and classified staff. It isn't a raise, it isn't anything like that. It's just natural step and column. And then with our reduction in enrollment, some natural attrition that looks like is going to happen, which will help us in the out years.
Okay.
What is, oh, I'm sorry, Ted, one more. What isn't reflected currently in the multi-year projections is the funding for ESSER 2 and ESSER 3 and the expanded learning opportunities grant. Because at the time that I was preparing this, we still hadn't had positive, solid numbers, and I don't like to add anything in there that I'm not 100% certain about.
Okay. Any other questions or comments? Go ahead, Phil.
All right, that's a budget thing. I'm going to ask.
Of course, yeah.
I got three.
Okay.
So are the deferrals, are they on the AR and the balance sheet?
No, we don't book them that way. That's per the state. I know.
Wow. Okay. And then the cafeteria, child nutrition services. So when we come up with our budget for next year, it starts July 1st. Where are we going to put in costs for summer school? And not only for labor costs, but the PD to get everybody safe surge certified and that whole bit. Is that this year or is that next year?
The certification I'm not 100% of, but we do that in-house. So I don't believe there's any cost to the district on that. The actual staffing that we would have for a summer school program would come straight from the expanded learning opportunities grant or ESSER funding, because both of those would cover the additional either transportation costs that we had for summer school if we had any, and any additional staffing or food costs that we had for feeding. But we'll still continue with universal feeding through the summer. So it's kind of a twofold. We'll continue to receive some sort of state and federal funding, but we can offset that with the ESSER fundings.
Okay, and the last one. So you mentioned facilities. TCO, total cost of ownership. So these new buildings that we built are all going to have, the freshness date is all going to be on the same time 30 years from now. And so pass another bond, or do we start building a reserve? And that's it.
Well, that you will lead me very quickly into our next agenda item when we finish this one, when we talk about the MOU with Climatech. Some of what we'll talk about there is what we can garner in savings for upgrades that we can make now to our existing buildings and building off of our reserves. One of the things is through this, we had to stop construction, basically because we couldn't do construction for a while. And then not knowing where we were going, starting any new construction projects just wasn't feasible at the time. So we do have about $3 million currently in our capital facilities funds that we've received through RDA funding. And so that's kind of our little nest egg that we're working off of right now, along with some deferred maintenance funding. And that still continues. The RDA funding, as I believe I've mentioned in the past to the board, will continue to receive roughly $1 million a year until 2032, based on Live Oak's continued COPS that they're paying off.
Oh, that's right. Yeah. Wow. That's good news.
So one more thing. So we're approving the projected number on the all those reports tonight?
The projected number for enrollment specifically, or projected on the budget?
Revenues and expenditures.
Correct.
Okay.
That will then become our second interim budget after the board approves it.
And by the way, thank you for putting budget in the agenda item.
You are welcome.
You mentioned enrollment, and so has there been, I'm sure there's been talk, but about this exodus from California, and any concern as far as it, for the budget or for, money for us with students, because you're hearing about families leaving California. Maybe maybe that's all on Facebook and Fox News, who knows, but it's like, has there been talk or any concern about that?
I will tell you, Chad.
We're moving, Phil?
So Ted,
Yeah.
if you go out and try to buy a house right now, you'll find there's not much inventory.
Yeah.
So if people are leaving, they're moving in just as quick.
Yeah. Okay. Well, that's good to know too. Really. Okay. I know that just kind of came up. All right. So this is an action item. So if there's nothing from the public.
Nothing on
double
text.
check.
Nothing
Okay.
on text.
Oops, hold on one sec. Nothing on email.
Nothing on Zoom.
Okay, is there a motion to approve the second interim budget report for SoCal Elementary School District?
So I make the motion with the adjustment to the ending balance.
Oh, I'm sorry. Thank you, Phil. The ending balance is correct on the multi-year projections, but in the SACS form on page, oh goodness.
1 million.
I know, I believe it's page 68 on the docket. Phil caught it. I'm going to just admit it. There is the restricted ending balance should have been $70,000, but I'm not sure how I got 57 and some change in there. So if you look at the SACS report on the docket, it is showing $12,000 higher than what our actual ending fund balance would be. So the memo has the correct amount.
Good catch, Phil.
I know. I think he was hoping to catch me.
So then the motion needs to state the correct balance.
My motion was to accept with the adjustment, whatever it is.
Okay. So
I will second that.
All right, there we go. Phil first, Amanda second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? None. Okay, last item, 6B. Let's consider approval of the comprehensive energy infrastructure, indoor air quality and sustainable program. Big words. Michelle.
Me again. All right, good evening, everyone. I would just like to introduce Robert from Climatech. If you'd like to say a few words to the board, that'd be great.
So yeah, good evening, everyone. Rob here with Climatech. We deal with comprehensive infrastructure modernization programs for schools, looking at leveraging available funding sources outside school traditional budgets to help with driving energy savings, improving overall efficiency of your campuses, sustainability efforts, power resiliency, renewable energy sources, and making upgrades to your existing structures.
So a while back, I had presented to the board some facilities upgrades that we still wanted to do that were hope to be part of our bond that we passed, and just some things that continue to need to be done. A lot of those things can be done, especially like our windows at New Brighton and some other projects, some HVAC up at Santa Cruz Gardens, things that I've talked about with the board in the past. Working and partnering with Climatech, they'll be able to help us possibly find some additional funding sources, credits, and partnering with other agencies to help us move that forward. Also, the MOU that we're presenting tonight is basically piggybacking on Santa Cruz City Schools RFP that they have already had in place. And correct me if I'm wrong, Rob, that was about 7 years ago. Is that right?
The first phase was, yeah. 2014, and we're working with them on our fourth phase of work right now.
And so it made it a lot more simple than going out for RFP at this time. So I appreciate that. Thank you. And I appreciate City Schools for doing the legwork for us.
Yeah. All right, thank you. Any questions from the board? Any questions? Phil, yeah, go for it.
Yeah, so I had time to read everything. So, hi, Rob. I have this thing that I've been trying to get to happen, and that is all of our school sites be able to stay up and running for a week without being on the grid, power and water. So don't know what that costs, but thought I'd just throw that out there.
Excellent. This is a very collaborative process that we like to work with, so we appreciate feedback from the board and your priority projects. We really want to start understanding them from the very beginning to make sure we're addressing them.
I think Phil is more than happy to share all of his ideas with us. He's got some really good ones. One of the ones that I know you're going to be very excited about, Phil, is possibly the electric charging stations and the possibility of having those installed at our school sites. That's something we've talked about as well. So I know, yeah.
And then a few of them at the DO for when we start getting electric trucks.
Yeah.
You mean at our new DO?
Yeah, sure.
What would happen if you put solar panels on the roof at the DO?
I'm not sure it would survive.
I'm excited about this, and I'm especially excited at the part that says no fiscal impact at this time. That's all I gotta say.
Yeah, we did. We just made poor Rob sit through the meeting here. Yeah, so. Come on, you got to ask him a question. I'm dying to ask him about those face masks behind him. Is that for lacrosse or something?
That's exactly it. Yep, been playing.
Okay.
Going on 25 years now. So.
Wow. Okay, that's good. You look like you're still put together.
Suit hides it.
All right, gang. Anything from the public?
Nothing on email.
Nothing on text, sorry.
Nothing on Zoom.
Okay, very good. Was there a motion to approve the Comprehensive Energy Infrastructure Indoor Air Quality and Sustainable Program, MOU? Is there a motion?
I'll make the motion.
Amanda first. Phil second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? None. Okay.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. Good evening,
Yeah,
everyone.
nice meeting you. Correspondence. Does anybody have any correspondence?
Nope.
Okay. Future agenda items.
Yeah,
Okay.
well, I don't know if they're agenda items, but I'm going to just run through a couple of things. There is a rent relief program out there run by the county office, by the County of Santa Cruz. And I'm hoping we can collaborate with them to make sure any of our staff that could use rent relief is connected.
Are you rent? R-E-N-T? Rent? You said rent.
Rent relief, yes.
Oh, okay, got you. All right.
And so the other one is, I saw in all of those emails, about Don, that we have a wellness program, an employee assistance program. And again, emotions are running high, and I just want to make sure that we reach out to our staff and let them know that this is there. And if we have to call up the insurance people and say, hey, do a Zoom thing, let's do that. So those two things. We need to talk about elections. I mean, let's put the parcel tax back on. And when we need to look at the census and whether we're going to do the zone thing and that whole bit. In the minutes, can we put in how many people were viewing on YouTube or whatever? Because I don't see that. We don't have to, but if we know, can we put that in the minutes?
Yeah, that's we've had that before. It's the average of about 8 people, but yeah, we've had that before. That's always a good idea to have that noted in there. I like that, Phil.
And that's it for me.
So you're asking to have something put on for a possible parcel tax to discuss?
Well, the majority of our voters want that.
Yes, you're absolutely right. The majority does.
And I want to listen to what our voters have to say.
Okay. So that is an idea that we could bring forward in a discussion. And the other one is zoning for elections.
Yeah, so I think we're supposed to be waiting for the census to come out and to see where everybody landed. And then are we going to have the different zones in our district and have that kind of an election? So I don't know where the census is right now, but I think it's like off track somewhere.
Well, that's a couple things we could talk about. Okay. With that.
I was just going to say.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
Oh, Linda, for the meeting notes, there was a height of 7 on YouTube and we're down to 5 now.
Actually, it was up to 8.
Yeah, it seems like average is 8 a meeting.
That's because I joined, George.
Yeah, there we go. Yeah.
I'm also 1, so I don't know if that counts.
We'll throw it in there. All right, gang, I know some people are ready to get going. So is there a motion to adjourn the meeting?
I move.
Second?
I second. Oh, go ahead, Jen. You got it.
Well, let's discuss it for an hour. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? None. All right, gang, good meeting. Have a good spring break. We'll see you next month.
Hey, George, I got my Starlink invite.
Ooh, we should talk about that.
Good night,
Have
everybody.
you seen it?
Thank you, everybody.
Have you seen it in the sky
You should
yet?
tell Michelle that
Someone should have closed the meeting.
I know. No, we're going to talk Skylink.
Aye.
This is
Bye,
still
gang.
being recorded.